Hey, and welcome to Record Spotlight. My name is Justin Taylor, and today we're going to be talking about the Moody Blues 1981 album Long Distance Voyager. Long Distance Voyager was recorded February 19th, 1980 to April 14th, 1981. It was released May 15th, 1981. It was recorded at Threshold Studios, which was the band's home studio, or their studios, I should say. It wasn't really a home studio, and Rack Studios London. Long Distance Voyager became the Moody Blues' second American #1 album upon release. Produced by Pip Williams, who is a newcomer to the band, after Tony Clark had basically done the whole run of albums prior to this. The Moody Blues are supplemented by the New World Philharmonic String Section, arranged by Pip Williams. The album cover was based on a painting by Thomas Webster called Punch from 1840. NASA's Voyager spacecraft is at the top of the front side of the album cover. This was due to Voyager 1 and 2 both flying in Saturn, making the news in 1980 to 1981. Now we have a few comments about the press in general about this album. We have one from the Country Evening Telegraph from May 30th, 1981. This was Simon Bradshaw. The Voyager album, their ninth, sees little change in their style. Each song said to typify stock characters of the 19th century. Recorded at their own Threshold Studios in the Surrey countryside, the album took 18 months to make and is produced by Pip Williams. And then Justin Hayward to Philip Booth at the Bolton Evening News said on May 28, 1981, "It must seem like a long time between albums to our fans. But we have always worked to our musical pace and standards. It has taken us more than 18 months to produce an album with which we are now satisfied is our best." And then we have a quote from Ray Thomas to the Gazette. This was November 20th, 1981. He said, "The worst thing that could have happened would have been for us to whack out more formula material, which we easily could have done with our Moody Blues sound." This was John Lodge said this to Yardina Arar of the AP. "We're really excited. The great thing about rock and roll is that you hope the excitement keeps you going. And while it does, you keep playing. The success of this album is just another one of those things that you never cease to wonder at. It's like Days of Future Past. When that happened, you just can't believe it." Voyager is slightly different than the rest of the previous work, as Mike Pinder, the keyboardist of the band prior to this, he quit in 1978 shortly after they finished recording Octave. He refused to go on tour. Patrick Moraz, previously of Yes, came in and began playing keyboards for the band and later assumed a full membership role. This was a quote from Justin Hayward to Dennis Hunt of the LA Times. This was on August 2nd, 1981. "Patrick has made a big difference. He's outgoing and he's a performer. Mike wasn't really either one." It's pretty harsh words. Moraz was familiar with their music before he was invited to join them on tour. This was something that Patrick Moraz said to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on June 14th, 1981. "I remember them well from the 60s and 70s, but I never met them then. I knew only the music, and I had a lot of respect for them because of that music." And then we have a quote from Justin Hayward to Peter Trollope of Liverpool Echo. This was May 16th, 1981. "Yes, he has strong compositional sense and certainly keeps us all on our toes. I think this shows in the new album." This was about Patrick Moraz. And then I have another quote from Patrick Moraz about joining the band. This was to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Roger Kay was the interviewer, and this was June 14th, 1981. "They phoned me up when I was on my way to Rio to record my third solo album. I was in Miami and they asked me if I wanted to tour with them and then maybe go from there in terms of permanently joining the band. We decided to meet in London 2 weeks later. We rehearsed once because I wanted to play with them before making a definite decision. I wanted to hear them personally just to see if I could play with them. They knew my work, but they also wanted to hear me once just for formal purposes. So that's what we did, and it worked very well. It clicked instantaneously." Another quote from Patrick Moraz to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Same thing, Roger Kay, June 14th, 1981. "It's very different being with the Moody Blues as opposed to Yes, because I've got much more responsibility with the Moody Blues in the way of filling the sound and doing all the things I need to do to recreate that sound on stage." And as you listen to this album, you hear what he's talking about, because so much of the sound, and so much of the production relies so much on his specific keyboard textures. And you also notice that this album has a lot of different sounds that we've never heard before on Moody Blues records. There's a lot of different synthesizer sounds, whereas before it was mostly just the Mellotron was the go-to keyboard, and you had some piano and a little bit of organ and various keyboard instruments like that, like more traditional. But this one has a lot more synthesizers and just different sound effects that weren't there in previous incarnations, which kind of gives a lot of interest to the sound as well. So there were 3 singles issued with this album. First one was Gemini Dream. This reached number 12 on the Billboard Top 100 and number 1 on the Canada RPM chart, which is quite surprising. The Voice was the second single. It reached number 15 on the Billboard Top 100 and number 9 on the Canada RPM charts. Then the third single was Talking Out of Turn, and this didn't do as well. It reached number 65 on the Billboard Top 100 and then reached number 27 on the Canada RPM charts. The reception to this album was overall very positive, especially coming off of their Octave album from 1978. There was a little bit of a disconnect with that album, especially since they had just come off of their, it was about a 5 or 6 year layoff, just doing different projects other than the Moody Blues. A lot of solo albums. John Lodge and Justin Hayward ended up doing a Blue Jays album. It was kind of a duo album. It was a little bit different than the Moody Blues. So they worked on a few different things at the time, and so the Octave album was panned highly by critics for being a very disjointed venture. This was Bill Provick of the Ottawa Citizen, May 29th, 1981. Again, there's no way the Moody Blues can perform at their former peak, but fortunately this new album is far more than mere echoes of past glory. The album is full of fine material, but the first 2 cuts in particular come closest to the traditional Moody Blues magic. This was another quote from Bill Provick of the Ottawa Citizen, May 29, 1981. Those who weren't into rock during the Moody Blues' prime years may find a lot of joyful discoveries just waiting to be made. His music is diametrically opposed to the nihilistic simplicity of a lot of punk and new wave material, but in terms of generating and reflecting thoughts and feelings, it's every bit as valid. Dick Hogan of the Gazette had to say this on May 29, 1981. The album is nice, but not as good as expected after a 3-year wait. Seven Oaks Chronicle reviewer by the name of C.S. said this on May 30th, 1981. The Moody Blues style is easily recognizable and can be boring, but in Voyager they have managed to leave that behind with tracks such as Gemini Dream, which verges on disco, and Painted Smile, which is very neatly put together in a circus style. Greg McMillan of the Hamilton Spectator on May 29, 1981 had to say this: continues to turn out music that is immediately identifiable, although the old mystical quality seems to be missing. The harmonies and arrangements are pleasing most of the time, but not nearly as captivating as one might expect. Gene Bird Brown of the Salisbury Post said this on June 21st, 1981. Long Distance Voyager is an inefficacious attempt to revive past success. Voyager is loaded with monotonous shortcomings. As usual, there's the mystical lyrics backed by overproduced vocals and strings. This tends to leave the listener with a good case of shut-eye. Praise for Long Distance Voyager is in short supply. I was originally very excited about the new Moody Blues album, but after a listen or two, I find it nothing more than disappointing. This is from the Arizona Republic, June 7th, 1981. The one serious departure from previous patterns is that Thomas contributes to the album's leanest and most purposeful song, Veteran Cosmic Rocker, a departure from the usual supremacy of Hayward and Lodge. Before release, Mike Pinder began to toil over the band recording the album under the Moody Blues name, a name he felt he had a right to, and attempted to sue the band. A number of reporters began to cover Pinder's story, as he was not successful with this claim. And then we have a quote from the Evening Standard, May 14th, 1981. Pinder has always been the most colorful Moody, although his penchant for sun worship and similar eccentricities has perplexed his friends for some time. It's kind of a weird quote there, but kind of shows the way that the UK press was painting Pinder at this point. This was Graham Edge to the Evening Standard that same day. I don't see how he can bring a claim like this. Mike hasn't toured with the Moody's for about 6 years, and he took only a small part in our last album. His place has now been taken by Patrick Moraz. And then Patrick Moraz said this to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram to Roger Kay on June 14th, 1981. It wasn't a case of me taking somebody else's job, though. A place was vacant, and they asked me to fill it. And then Justin Hayward said this to Peter Trellope of the Liverpool Echo. When Mike left, we had 3 people in mind to replace him. Patrick topped that list. We remembered his work with Yes. The trouble was, we hadn't got a clue how to hold auditions for the group. I mean, how do you audition someone? In the end, it became more of a case of Patrick auditioning us. We just sat around looking a bit silly until he suggested we play a song. He had learnt Tuesday afternoon, and once we started playing, we knew that was it. Some critics mourned the loss of Pinder and felt that it hindered the album dramatically. This was Bruce Bitt of the Detroit Free Press on July 26, 1981. Pinder's absence is apparent, for Moraz is a keyboard technician, and his immaculate synthesizer fills are no match for the brooding orchestral sounds of Pinder's Mellotron. Still, this is a small hindrance that doesn't drag the album into a creative abyss. The critics frequently made comments on the ages of the Moody Blues members, often going through the hardships of the band and the 5-year breakup in particular. There could be no use denying it. We just had to split to take stock of ourselves and get something out of our system. I mean, if a group like the Moody's is to survive, you have to go through something like that. That was Justin Hayward to Peter Trellope of the Liverpool Echo. We have played very few dates in Britain in the last few years, I'll admit, but the band never broke up. The Moody Blues are a world band, and we were giving shows in other countries and preparing for the new album. That was John Lodge to James Belzy of the Evening Post, May 23rd, 1981. If you're asking me why I still have motivation when I seem to have things that I've always wanted, then the answer is that I couldn't do anything else. I love music. I couldn't spend a day without it, without being involved in the group. That was Justin Hayward to Peter Trellope of the Liverpool Echo. I think it was necessary, really, to get back on the road first to meet the people. When groups record albums before playing any of the material live before an audience, you don't have a chance to feel that it's right. That was John Lodge to the AP. Justin, when asked about pressure to recreate the past sounds, and the past in general, he said, "No, I don't feel any pressure on us at all. The only pressure comes from within the band. We want to go on making records, making music. We are probably our worst critics. You have to be." The band as a legacy act became cemented around this time, with many people the world over reacting just as favorably to their shows as if they hadn't left. One of the most appealing things about the Moody Blues show is that they appear to enjoy playing. Band members often exchanged smiles during songs, and it had to have an influence on the crowd and vice versa. The audience gave the band extended standing ovations after 9 different songs. That was Bill Moore of the El Paso Herald-Post on June 26, 1981, about the Tucson concert they performed a few days earlier. For Patrick Moraz, his mind was on the future of music and sound. I'm personally a very future-oriented person as far as music and technology is concerned. I'm a bit of an idealist. I'm always trying to foresee transcultural moods and fashions and trends in music. That was Patrick Moraz to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, June 14th, 1981. So now I'm going to go into my review of things I noticed with the album and what I feel are the strong points and what I feel are the weak points, and then I'll give my rating towards the end of how I feel about this album in general. So we're going to start off with The Voice, which is the first track on side 1. It kind of starts with a backwards high piano note and introduces Patrick Moraz on synthesizers before launching into the song. You really feel a difference with this track. With this intro, it's a lot different than anything they've ever done before, and you can really feel Moraz's presence on this album in comparison to the previous album with Mike Pinder. Hayward's fuzz guitar makes an appearance, giving a very nostalgic vibe to this track, even though it is very different and very modern. It gives that kind of familiar Moody's sound. This is one of the best songs on the album, as it sounds like classic Moody Blues, but with some flourishes of Patrick Moraz using modern synthesizers versus the Mellotron, such as a little sequenced line and a little orchestral synth melodies during the bridge. An attention-grabbing opener. It kind of sets the tone for the rest of the album. Then we have the second song on side one, which is Talking Out of Turn. This song starts with a few multi-track synth sounds, including an interesting kind of sample and hold synth sound. The Royal Philharmonic makes their first appearance here and opens the song in a very grand fashion. This is a very strong acoustic guitar-based ballad featuring John Lodge on lead vocals. My only gripe is that it didn't need to be over 7 minutes long. If trimmed to about 4 minutes, it would have been more effective and more concise. It runs on a little bit too long, especially towards the end. I know that they were trying to build up into like a kind of like a grand chorus, but it doesn't really work that well in my opinion. The song is strong, but it's not that strong to do that. Now we go into the third song on side one, which is Gemini Dream. This is a very different dry sound for the Moody's. They're kind of known for their reverb and like very atmospheric kind of compositions. This is almost disco or with a dance beat almost. It's a very catchy song regardless, and it has some interesting chords and melodies throughout. It has a varied structure, which makes it very interesting to the listener. As the first time you listen to, it's hard to tell where they're going to go with it. The song in general kind of reminds me very much of ELO. The fourth track on side one is In My World. This is very classic Moody Blues sounding. There are some great over-the-top harmonies that come in and out of the song, which sounds straight out of their 70s catalog. Again, the song runs on a bit too long, being almost 10 minutes long. Ray Thomas makes his entrance on the song on flute, which gives it a 70s vibe with the Moody Blues kind of typical sound. But it is, again, it's a little bit too long. Over 10 minutes long, it didn't need to be that, or almost 10 minutes long, it didn't need to be that long. So for the first song on side two, it's called Meanwhile. Fender Rhodes makes its appearance on this song, which is highly unusual for the Moody Blues. It reminds me a bit of a cousin to Tuesday Afternoon with its driving multi-tracked acoustic guitars. The song does build up towards the end into quite a crescendo, a very strong side two opener in my opinion. Lyrics such as "I thought I'd end up as a hero, I thought the glory would be mine" finds Hayward reminiscing about a past love gone sour. 22,000 Days is the second song. It's a really cool single line guitar riff that drives the song along in the beginning and during the choruses before Lodge takes over on lead vocals. During the verses, there is a really interesting arpeggiated organ part happening. It's kind of unique to nothing I've ever heard this band do before. 22,000 Days is about 60 years, which is the average life expectancy of a cosmic thinker, apparently. I think that's where this idea of this song came from. Third song, Nervous, it's a bit boring of a ballad. It goes on for almost 10 minutes. This is another one that's a little bit too long. It's a bit reminiscent of Pink Floyd in some ways. Yeah, I don't have much to say about it other than that. Painted Smile is the next track. We have these three final tracks, which are all Ray Thomas tracks, and they kind of run into one another. I guess you could say they're not all Ray Thomas tracks. It's kind of like a Ray Thomas suite because there is a bit from Graham Edge in the middle there. But the first part is Painted Smile. Ray Thomas's voice is very welcome, as this is kind of his first feature on the record. Feels like he's disappeared from the rest of the record. It's very focused in on John Lodge and Justin Hayward. This song is a bit whimsical, as the subject matter is about a clown jester or some sort of entertainer. There are very strong harmonies on this track as well. There's a chorus piano emulating a tack piano, which is kind of a nice touch. Like I said before, at the beginning of this review, you could hear all the different textures that Moraz is bringing to the table here, and it's a lot more than Pinder ever did. And I think it creates a very different vibe for this album in comparison to some other older albums. Not necessarily better in my opinion, but it's just a different, you can tell that it's quite a different band, just from one player changing. Then we go on to Reflective Smile. This is poetry by Graham Edge. It makes its reappearance on a Moody's album. I just wish that there was more, or another poem on side A would make it feel more like the Moody's, rather than kind of the Justin Hayward, John Lodge show. I really love his poetry. I really love the kind of like the unique kind of audio treatment they do of it as well too. It's really fun and really exciting to listen to, and it makes them a little bit different than a lot of their peers, which is one of the things that draws me to their music. And then we have the final track. There's a lot has been said about this track. It's the Veteran Cosmic Rocker. This is a Ray Thomas track about an aging rock and roller. It's kind of a funny subject, but it really is one of the more interesting tracks, in my opinion. There are all sorts of textures on this song, including some really fantastic harmonica. You could tell that they really had planned this song as the ending track, as they kind of pull it all the stops, bringing in interesting sounds. There's worldly sounds in there, and structures into the mix to create kind of a grand finish. You can tell a lot of time was spent on this track, like the majority of the time, to kind of give this like a big bang at the end. In my opinion, I think they succeeded with it. Overall, I'd give this album 3.5 stars out of 5. I think that the tracks that are great are really great, and it's great to hear them back on top, coming into the 80s, really hot and really ready to go, and they sound really reinvigorated with Patrick Moraz at the helm there. Basically, he's the one that's doing a lot of the textures on this album. A lot of it is keyboard oriented, although there are quite a few guitars as well too. I gotta say, Graham Edge's playing on this album is very tight and very good as well too. His drum sound it's really great. You can tell that they spent a lot of time on this album, as I said before, 18 months recording this, and they wanted to make sure that this was the best that they could possibly get it at the time with the band that they had. So overall, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. The only things that are holding it back are the long run time on some of them. They didn't need to be so long. It is obvious they kind of went into this thinking to create kind of like a grand album, which would kind of improve on their 70s work, and in some ways it does in some ways. This is an album where the whole album is an experience as well. The tracks don't really resonate as much outside of the album structure. As I said, Moraz injects a very fresh approach to the songs, as there's numerous keyboard overdubs featuring textures unheard on previous Moody's albums. The only track that's super boring, in my opinion, is Nervous. If Nervous had been shortened, it's possible the album would rank slightly higher. So thank you very much for watching my review of the Moody Blues' Long Distance Voyager. If you'd like to hear more from me, I'm on the Good Timin' podcast, the Beach Boys podcast, also doing the Brian's Back podcast about Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys from 1974 to 1978. And I'm also on the Reddit forums, or if you want to leave a comment for me on YouTube, I try to get back as soon as possible. If you have any ideas on specific albums you want me to cover, feel free to leave it in the comments, and I will try my best to get back to that and to fulfill all your requests. Thank you so much, and hopefully you have a great day. We'll see you later.